Welcome back. It's Monday again, so just a bit of a Monday musing, I suppose. Now, what I want to talk about today is the persistence of the Christian worldview. And I know I need to get away from this topic of the Christian worldview, but it pervades our practices a lot. It always has, it probably always will, but, you need to talk about it. Now, if you are sitting there saying, oh, those Christians, those Christian people, stick around, because this has very little to do with the people who actually follow the Christian faith. All right. Welcome to my channel. You are entering the world of magic and mysticism with your host, Lee W. Johnson. Keep the lights on and help improve the channel by becoming a supporter for just $2.99 per month. Hit the join button. Okay, so the persistence of the Christian worldview. Now, I've been trying to find a way to put this into words that will not be too insulting for people, but I'm sure I'm going to piss some people off with this. But that's got to be said anyway. All right, so let's start with the Christian worldview itself and certain aspects. Now, what we find is that we have the idea of light versus dark and good versus evil, and this whole thing around the war. There's this imaginary war against evil that they have to. The Christian worldview has to overcome. And it's not necessarily or so much about the war over the evil, it's about the war of an opposing force. So in the Christian faith, we have them portraying themselves as being the good guys, and therefore we have the bad guys, and they have this opposing force in their own faith. Now, we find that this sort of bleeds through to many pagan paths. And this is also prevalent in the left-hand path a lot. And that's really why I want to speak about this, because it's something that we need to stop and think about and actually examine within ourselves. Because one of the main reasons that people actually do move from a Christian faith into a pagan path is because of the trauma that they had from the Christian faith, or it's something that they don't believe anymore, or they're not getting the messages, the answers that they need. Something moves them from that into a pagan path, and therefore it would be kind of obvious that you would want to get away from the Christian worldview. But the problem is that it just kind of goes with them, and they start following a pagan path. They start following witchcraft or Wicca or a left-hand path, be it Satanism, demonolatry, whatever it is, a pagan or a magical path, and they just take all of that Christian worldview with them and often kind of reverse it. In some instances, you'll find that a lot of neo-pagans will continue with the whole good versus evil thing. We don't have Satan we don't believe in Satan, we don't believe in hell, there is no such thing as the devil in witchcraft. That's false to begin with. But there is that whole idea, and this very much came out of the 80s and the 90s with the satanic panic. People did start saying that there is no devil in witchcraft, there is no Satan, we don't believe in Satan, we don't believe in hell, and all of this, to try and move away from that satanic panic. But it continued, obviously. But if we look into history of witchcraft, into history of folk magic, then we do find mention of the devil. And it's not the theosophical devil of the Christians, it's the folkloric devil of the pagans, of the pagan people. But, you know, that's just one aspect. There are many. I mean, we even have the Christian worldview of I'm right and you're wrong. You should follow my way because my way is the right way. And we see this in paganism all the time. You know, largely pagan people attacking Christians because now they found this path which speaks to them, which does speak to their heart, which is their heart path. And it becomes this thing of, you know, now looking at the Christian people that they came from and saying that they're wrong. It doesn't mean that they're wrong. Even if they are wrong, it doesn't actually matter. It's completely irrelevant. Stick to your path, follow your path, let them do whatever they want to do. If they're wrong, they're wrong. If you're wrong, you're wrong. It doesn't matter. It's the path that speaks to you. It's the path of heart for you, and that for them is their path of heart. So just let them follow what they want to follow, and stop continually trying to attack people who are on a different path, because all it's doing is making you the same as them. Now, we find this a lot on the left-hand path, especially if you go through something like this platform, YouTube. You'll find a lot of left-hand pathers are carrying on about the war against the right-hand path, about calling the infernal armies of hell, and these are all things which speak of Christianity. They are raising the demons from hell. That's Christianity. That's pure Christianity. And the war against the right-hand path, because, you know, they're on the left-hand path and therefore the right-hand path is wrong. That's Christianity. That is a Christian worldview. We get it with light workers, especially. And what you'll also find is that there's this thing of people talking about themselves pursuing or being enlightened, but they're pursuing this path of enlightenment and ascension. And what they're doing is they're actually putting themselves on a pedestal. They are raising themselves above everybody else and saying, I am better than you. That, again, is a Christian worldview. I saw a post recently on what I thought was a shamanic group, but it was basically that the hand of God is coming down to squash all of the people who are following the dark ways, the dark path. And I had to comment and say I didn't realize this was a Christian group. Thanks for letting me know. And the reply I got was that the person who posted it is not a Christian. I said, but you're following a Christian worldview. And they are. It's purely a Christian worldview, because all they're doing is saying that we have the light people and we have the dark people who are following a dark path, and we have to separate ourselves from them because we cannot fall into this dark path. Oh my God, please. Just... yeah, it's impossible. It really is. And trying to get through to people like that, completely and utterly impossible. Trying to explain that, you know, somebody actually came into the comments and said they followed Tao. And I said that's perfect, because if you're following Taoism, you are exploring the universe as a whole, as an entire unit, and that includes a dark aspect and a light aspect. I mean, just the yin-yang symbol itself actually speaks of it. So there's that mingling of the dark and the light. You have to have both and bring them into equilibrium or balance. You know, you've got all these people on this light worker path that are trying to eliminate the evil in the world, and eliminate the darkness. The problem is they don't actually understand what the evil is. You know, when we talk about evil, what I've actually found is that a lot of what evil is, we're talking about the bigotry, the transphobia, the people who are trying to remove groups of people, who are trying to suppress them, who are trying to put themselves above someone else or another group of people, trying to make themselves appear to be better because these other people should not exist. That to me would be evil. And the base that those people come from is purely a Christian worldview. So if we want to talk about evil, then we are looking at those who come with a Christian worldview. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are Christian people. There are a lot of Christian people who do not follow that premise. They may still be having the ideology of God versus Satan, but that becomes often a lot more internal. It's about trying to overcome their own evils, their own demons, rather than taking it to a political forum or to a public forum where they are talking against gender, transphobia, against women, suppressing women, and all of these things which are just vile, completely and utterly vile. But it all comes from a basis of a Christian worldview, which is that I am right and you are wrong. If you do not follow my way, you are following the dark path, and therefore you will burn in hell. All of these things. And we can say, why would we follow a God like that? Who says that? I mean, there's some parts in the Bible. The Bible was written by people, and quite often it was probably just their interpretation of what the message they were getting. They were just interpreting it in a particular way, and it was a human interpretation. So, is God the evil force out there? Maybe, maybe not. I don't really know. I wouldn't say so myself. I think it's the people who are doing it, the people who are pushing these ideas forward, and those ideas are completely and utterly false. They are just a skewing of the information that they are getting. They're reading something and having their own interpretation, and then putting that forward as being the truth, and it's not. It's just a bad interpretation of the texts that they are getting. But now this has gone into what's wrong with Christianity, but that's not where I wanted to go. What I'm trying to put across is that we have a Christian worldview which is prevalent in our society. Most of us in a Western society come from it, even if we did not have parents or our own community were heavily into Christianity. It's still part of the Western society in general. So we have all of these things which are taught to us as children. We go to school and we are taught a Christian worldview. It's the entire basis of it. It's the overculture. So we get taught all these things. We have to overcome the darkness. We have to overcome the evil. We have to find the path which is right and disregard or reject the path that is wrong. And the problem is the interpretation. What is right and what is wrong? None of it. It's all right and all wrong at the same time. We just need to find a path which speaks to us, which is our own path of heart. And everybody's path of heart is going to be different. So it's a case of following your own path and allowing everybody else to follow their path, because their path is right for them. And their path, just like your path, will probably change over time. If it doesn't, then they are fixed in their ways and they're not going to progress, they're not going to grow. That's not your problem. They're just not ready for it. And that's fine. Just allow it to happen the way it's supposed to happen. But I don't think we should be going around putting down people just because they follow something which you disagree with. You follow something they disagree with. So all that's going to happen is you're going to attack, and they're going to attack, and you're going to attack, and they're going to attack, and it doesn't end because we're not removing ourselves from that Christian worldview which says that this is the way you're supposed to do it. So personally, and this is something I have to do constantly, because I was raised I wasn't raised by my parents in a Christian worldview. I was raised in a society which is Christian, and I was also very much involved in the Methodist Church at one stage in my youth. And therefore I've come with that programming. It is ingrained in me, it's part of who I am. But it's something I no longer agree with, and I have to keep checking to make sure that the things I say, the things I think, the things I do are not falling into that Christian worldview which I now disagree with. But it's ingrained, it's programmed, and every now and again it comes out, it comes up, and I have to catch myself and stop myself. And I think that's what we need to be doing all the time. And the more you do that, the less it becomes ingrained, the more it starts to shift out of you, because you start to realize that part of the programming that you don't want anymore, and you consciously do something about removing it and moving yourself further and further into a programming or into a worldview that you actually prefer. But yeah, we have all of these light workers and the white witches and the light witches, and who are, basically going around and saying that the devil is evil and Satan is evil, and therefore the left-hand paths are evil, putting them onto this right-hand path way, this right-hand path aspect, and which is a Christian worldview. Okay, because we have those people on the right-hand path. I hate using the terms right-hand path and left-hand path, but they're on the right-hand path, and they are working against the evil, against the Satan, against all of these things which are left-hand path. Then we have the people on the left-hand path who are doing exactly the same with the people on the right-hand path. So they're also plugged into this Christian worldview, because it's all about I'm right and you're wrong, about opposing or fighting against, and this war against their opposing force. On the left-hand path, the opposing force is the right-hand path. On the right-hand path, the opposing force is the left-hand path. So, maybe they don't call themselves Christian, but they are still following a Christian worldview. And this is what I'm trying to get across, is that we need to remove ourselves from that Christian worldview if we want to remove ourselves from Christianity. Just taking the concept and transferring it to a different spiritual path, which may follow different gods, which may follow a different set of beings, entities, deities, which are not the same as the Christians follow, is not removing yourself from a Christian worldview. You're still taking all of those concepts, all of those things, and all you do is just transplanting them into another spot. So it's like taking all the weeds out of your garden because you don't like this garden anymore. So you take all the weeds out to try and make it better. But what we're going to do is we're going to move over to this plot of land over here, and we're just going to plant all the weeds back in there. That's really all people are doing. And if we want to remove ourselves, if we want to immerse ourselves in paganism, we need to remove the weeds and start growing the garden again. And by removing the weeds, we are removing the Christian worldview and all the concepts of good versus evil, fighting the opposing force, because there is no opposing force. I mean, following a pagan path itself is about following nature. It's about connecting with the land. And when you're connecting with the land, there are opposing forces there already, and they have to exist together. They do exist together. we have creation and destruction in the same place, in the same land, in the same spot. Whether it's a huge big forest or just one rock in your garden, you've got creation and destruction just in that one tiny little rock or stone that is sitting in your garden right now. If you really look at it, there are things which are being created, there are things which are being destroyed, and that needs to happen. Life doesn't happen without creation and destruction. If we only had one, we would not have life, we would not be here, we would not exist. So if you want to really immerse yourself in that pagan worldview, you've got to remove yourself from the Christian worldview, because it is opposed to that pagan worldview. They are not the same thing. They are very, very different. So yes, anyway, so that's what I just wanted to try and get across. And just keep checking yourself, making sure you are not thinking or saying or doing something which is still immersing yourself in that Christian worldview. And I think the world will be a better place anyway. Alright, so I hope I didn't piss too many people off, but anyway, have a good one for now. Cheers, I'll see you next time.